Hi everybody. Since the Oklahoma Sooners have the bye week this week, I thought I would take an opportunity to bring up an interesting subject, and I ask you to have an open mind when I say it. Could the Big 12 South champions this season come from Oklahoma? From Stillwater, Oklahoma. Now, before a lot of you start laughing and can't stop laughing until an hour later, again, I'm going to ask you to keep an open mind about this, okay? The Oklahoma State Cowboys, it's not an impossibility for them to win the Big 12 South this season. In a little bit, I'll explain the following reasons. I'm not saying that they're going to, but I am going to give you reasons as to why it could happen. And before I get into those reasons, there are a few things that I need to highlight so that there's absolutely no misunderstanding as far as where all this is coming from. Number one, I do not have a second favorite college football team. If you know me, watch my videos, you know I'm a diehard Oklahoma Sooner fan. Sooner born, Sooner bred. One day I'll be Sooner dead. I do not have a second favorite team and never will. To me, I love the Oklahoma Sooners, and everybody else might as well be the enemy. I do not root for a school just because they're from the same state as the Oklahoma Sooners. I also do not root for a school based upon conference affiliation. If you're that way, that's your preference. I don't hold anything against you. You're entitled to that. It's America's free country. You can root for whoever you want to and however many teams you want to. But I am not, nor will ever be one of those people that says, well, I like both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, but I pull for Oklahoma when the teams play each other, or vice versa. Or, you know what? I'm going to root for Texas against Alabama in the national championship because Texas is from the Big 12. Sorry, that's not me. Biggest reason is because, one, I'm allegiant to my team, Oklahoma Sooners. I'm allegiant to them and them specifically and solely. Second, and this is something that you really need to think about if you're rooting for more than one team and they're from your own conference. You are recruiting against these other schools. Okay, so Texas beats Alabama. If that had happened, you know what? Texas probably gets even more recruits. 5-star recruits, 4 stars at the minimum. They're basically benefiting from the national championship. If they had beaten Alabama, then you know what? The rich get richer. I have never heard of anybody outside a particular conference saying, wow, you know what? If Texas had beaten Alabama, it would have been great for the Big 12. Go Big 12. I don't root for conferences, ladies and gentlemen. I root for my team and my team solely. Now, I might pull for a team, but only if it benefits Oklahoma. For example, if, let's say, in the case 2 years ago, Texas Tech beating Texas. Naturally, I pulled for Tech, but I do not wear Tech shorts. The Tech win naturally helped Oklahoma in the long run to winning the Big 12 South. So I pull for a specific team, but only if it benefits Oklahoma in rankings. If it benefits them as far as their standing in a conference, overall rankings, the BCS strength of schedule, stuff like that. So you need to know right away that I am not an Oklahoma State fan. The thought of Oklahoma State orange and black to me is just as grotesque as burnt orange or as Kansas State purple or as Baylor green. Okay, it's the same deal. What I'm going to be talking about, I want you to think about it with an open mind. And number two, I know that Oklahoma State has not had the strongest schedule in the world, and I know that they struggled against Troy back in week 2. And I know that Gerard Johnson of A&M may not have been 100% in that victory that OSU had over A&M just a few days ago. So I want to get those things off my chest. Now, the question that I'm going to bring up, should you take the Oklahoma State Cowboys seriously? And as of October 6, 2010, I say the answer is yes. For several reasons. Number one, Oklahoma State's offense runs and passes the ball efficiently. That's very important, especially when you consider in the Big 12 that not every school can do that. For example, Texas can't run and pass efficiently, and neither can Kansas State. Oklahoma State, for those who have selective memory, may not have known that 2 years ago, Kendall Hunter was one of the best running backs in the country. Last year, of course, he played, but played seldomly because of the ankle problems. He's healthy this year, and he looks outstanding. Number two, as far as Oklahoma State's team, Brandon Wheaton, the quarterback, he's looked sharp. He's looked efficient. But the big reason why Oklahoma State's offense is pretty darn good, and the reason why it's not so much of a rebuilding year as we thought it was going to be for Oklahoma State this year, is because of the emergence of the receivers. I thought that the Dez Bryant absence, and I know he didn't play part of last year, but I thought that was going to be a lot to overcome for the Cowboys. So far, that hasn't been the case. Hubert Anayam, it looked like he was going to be the #1 receiver for the Cowboys. So far, that has not been the case at all. In fact, Justin Blackmon, who has over 500 yards receiving for the Cowboys, he's the #1 guy. Josh Cooper, who was injury-riddled last year, he's been able to not really have to deal with those injuries, or not near as much. He has been a contributor as well, and Anayam contributes too. It's just that now Blackmon is the main receiver. So Oklahoma State has at least 3 high-quality receivers under this offense. And that's another reason, too, you better take Oklahoma State seriously, because Dana Holgorsen, the new offensive coordinator, an offense that basically has a lot of Texas Tech principles as far as spreading the receivers out, being a pass-happy offense, but also not forgetting the lone running back, which in this case is Hunter. So Oklahoma State's offense has been fun to watch so far. And then the defense, and I know that the defense is not the best in the world for Oklahoma State. They do bend a lot. But it's also a defense that takes chances. Bill Young, in that situation last week against A&M, with the game tied at 35 and A&M driving, made a defensive change, adding another safety, and that basically resulted in that safety, that defensive back for OSU, playing center field on a Johnson pass that was overthrown. Oklahoma State picks it off and moves it into A&M territory. A terrific decision by the defensive coordinator for OSU, and of course the Cowboys won the game on the last play with that long field goal. And that's another thing too, the special teams for Oklahoma State. Their kicker, Daniel Bailey, has not missed a kick yet this season. So Oklahoma State, and again, I know that the competition hasn't been the toughest, but remember, they're ranked in the top 25. The offense has put up a lot of points. The defense has scored this season, and also the special teams have been good with punt returns with Josh Cooper and his speedy self. So one reason you better take Oklahoma State seriously is because the offense is better than expected, and they run and pass the ball very well. Number two, this is no mystery. The Big 12 is not as good this year as it used to be. It's not as good as the Big 10. It's not as good as the Pac-10. It definitely isn't as good as the SEC. It's at best the 4th best conference out of the 6 BCS conferences in the country. Oklahoma and Nebraska, I know they're ranked in the top 10, but right now they cannot hold Alabama, Ohio State, or Oregon's jock, because those 3 teams are very good. Oklahoma and Nebraska are on a lower level. Oklahoma, yeah, they're undefeated, but fourth quarter they have not finished games off like they should. That's happened several times this season, including this past week against Texas, even though they won. And also with Nebraska, in their most recent contest, the Huskers against South Dakota State, a terrible 1AA team, only scoring 17 points. Taylor Martinez at quarterback, as good of a runner as he's been, probably the best running quarterback in the country if it weren't for Denard Robinson of Michigan. But we don't know if Martinez can be consistent throwing the ball. Struggled against the Jackrabbits a couple of weeks ago. So Nebraska, yeah, Martinez can run, but eventually he's going to have to throw the ball and throw the ball efficiently. And I know Texas has lost 2 games, but the Texas defense is still good. And next week in Lincoln, you can bet that Texas is going to do everything they can to take away that running element of Martinez and make him beat the Longhorns with his arm. That has yet to be proven. Naturally, Texas Tech isn't as good. They've already lost twice, including giving up over 50 points last week in that loss to Iowa State. And Baylor is improved, but the game against Oklahoma State in Stillwater, Kansas State is undefeated, but the quarterback stinks. They don't have a passing game. Good running game, but they're too one-dimensional, as I've mentioned too many times. And, of course, OSU already has the A&M game in hand. They won that a few nights ago on national TV. So the Big 12 is not as good as it used to be. And you think if there was ever a year for a middle-tier team, for example, Oklahoma State, to sneak up to the top of the Big 12 South standings, this could be the year. And then number 3, the schedule placement. It really helps Oklahoma State. Now, the only part about the schedule that's nasty is this non-conference game they've got coming up against Louisiana Friday. It's not a good time to sandwich that game in between conference games. But they can get past the Raging Cajuns on Friday. They got 8 days to get ready for Texas Tech, who's lost twice already, including losing once at home. And they lost to a Texas team that right now is not clicking on all cylinders. So unlike past years, this is a year where Oklahoma State could go into Lubbock and win. And if they can win, they would move to 6-0, the Pokes would, hosting Nebraska the following week in a battle of what could be unbeaten against unbeaten. And remember that Nebraska, the week before the Oklahoma State game, plays against Texas, the game that Nebraska's had marked on their calendars for the longest period of time, for both on-field reasons because of the Big 12 title loss last year, and because off the field the two squads just absolutely hate each other. That was evident because Nebraska didn't want to be a part of the Big 12 anymore. They're going to go to the Big 10 next year. So if Nebraska wins that one, they might think, you know what, that was our biggest game. Let's celebrate. But got to go to Stillwater the following week, and that's a game that maybe Nebraska, I'm not saying they won't be pumped up for it, but you get the feeling that Nebraska is going to put a lot of their poker chips on this Texas game coming up in a little over a week. So it's a bad timing game for Nebraska. Could be a great opportunity for Oklahoma State, whom if they can keep winning, should be ranked in the top 20 when that game against Nebraska rolls around on October 23rd. And Oklahoma State still has to play at Texas, but Texas has already lost at home this year to UCLA. So in the past, Oklahoma State at Texas, you might have said, well, it's not even analyze the game. Texas is going to win, and they always do. But this year, where Texas has shown a lot of vulnerability, especially on the offensive side, it's not impossible to think that Oklahoma State couldn't go into Texas and pull off an upset. And, of course, that leads us to the end of the year with the home game against the Sooners. And naturally, this is Oklahoma State's equivalent of OU Texas. That's how they treat Oklahoma. For Oklahoma, it's a big game, but Oklahoma State's not their biggest rival. Texas is. And as you've known in the past, Oklahoma State always plays Oklahoma tough, even in years where their talent didn't even come close to Oklahoma's. They played at an even level with the Sooners when the game's played in Stillwater. So, to answer your question, yes, you better take Oklahoma State serious because this is not a strong year for the Big 12, and the Big 12 contenders, even the ones up top, have issues of some sort. I'm not saying Oklahoma State will win the Big 12 South, but in the case of Bedlam, a game at the beginning of the year where I said Oklahoma was definitely going to win, I put that now as an either-or game just because Oklahoma State's a little better than I thought, and Oklahoma, even though they're undefeated, they still have some issues that have not been resolved. So that's my take on answering that question on should you take Oklahoma State seriously. If you play in Oklahoma State, I'm just saying you better. That's my take for this week. I'll have the Big 12 matchup show and then some coming up later in the week. Take it easy.